And we're back. Welcome to this, our last hour, hour number 2 of the Pat Miller program on this Saturday. I'd been talking to you that Philip Wegman was going to be on with me, and he was, and he did. And in fact, we recorded it twice because somehow in our system we lost it once. And now we have found out that we have lost it again. I can't get Philip back. He's got some Fox News stuff and some Wall Street Journal stuff going on there in D.C., so I can't get him back. So let me do this. I'll do what you can do if you'd like. If you go to realclearpolitics.com, that's realclearpolitics.com, and you click on authors, and then you get a hold of Philip Wegman's name down the list and click that. All of his articles that he's ever written for Real Clear Politics comes up. The most recent ones that he's written pop up first, and you'll find this one. Kamala Harris makes her case against Trump. Now, if we go back to the DNC, the convention, it was a DNC that didn't have Beyonce, it didn't have J-Lo, it didn't have, all the other people that had been rumored to be there. None of them were there, which is fine. But they had all of the balloons dropping, even though there were no surprise guests. The delegates and the guests in the United Center, which was packed, were more content with the fact that Kamala was there, and now the very real possibility that they held out there before them, that she could become America's first female president, was true, and they were thrilled. Now, think this through about how we got where we are. This is Kamala Harris, who 4 years ago had just come through the DNC as the vice presidential candidate. She had been basically plucked from obscurity by Joe Biden, and he placed her there on the ticket with him, and then they won, enough of the credentials and enough of the delegates that they made their number they had to hit in order to be over the top, and ta-da, there she is. Now, she's vice president of the United States. Joe Biden, who could not compose himself long enough to get through a speech, certainly not through a debate with Donald Trump, without the realms of his difficulty showing up. What I found to be, and I'm not saying this against Trump as a person, okay, but what I found to be one of the most embarrassing moments was as he stood there after the debate in a room with kind of a blank stare looking at his bride, Jill Biden. And she said, "Joe, I'm so proud of you. Do you know what you did? You answered every question they asked you. You were right on. You gave all the answers. You were tremendous." Ms. Biden, were you not listening to the same debate we were listening to? I'm sorry, but for Joe Biden, that was a train wreck. That was the absolute public display of everything that all the Republicans and some of the Democrats had been talking about, that Joe Biden was now out of the realm. He could not do what he was elected to do, which brings me to another question. Why is it that he resigned from the ticket, but he didn't resign from office? Would that not be a good thing? I mean, if you're convinced that he's not going to be the guy for the next year, then why have him on the ballot for the election? Why have that happen? Why not just say, this is where we are, and then get on with it? They couldn't bring themselves to do it, and they can't bring themselves to do it even now. Now, God forbid, I'm not saying this is what I want. I'm just asking the question. Should Joe Biden have something cataclysmic happen to him while he's on vacation or back at the White House or up in Delaware? Stroke, heart attack. Should he die? Again, I'm not wishing that on him. I promise you I'm not. But if that should happen, she does realize she has to take the oath of office right then, right? And if she does, she's now the one making all of the current policies. She's the one that's got to live out everything that was put in place under Joe Biden, even though now that she's coming out talking about how her campaign and her administration will be different. When, where, and how is that different? Kamala Harris came out at the convention. Chants of Kamala and USA, USA. She got the energy of the moment. The vice president beamed and she laughed. 2 slight cackles, I heard them. And she finally had to call everybody in the realm to be quiet. She goes, okay, let's get to business. Okay, and what was that? Now, get this. She first made a broad pitch for national unity. National. That means everybody. Unity. What does that mean? You may not agree with everything that I say, but I defend to the death your right to say it. I'm going to hold you as best I can because I want you and your people that are voting for you to come over and to vote for me. I want all of that. So she came out and she made this pitch for national unity and then immediately pivoted and started attacking Donald Trump and attacking him. And this is bizarre, as if he was still the president. He's not. Joe Biden still occupies the Oval Office. But for the purposes of campaigning, Harris hit the Republican like he was the incumbent. Quote, "In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man," she said. His ideas put into action, however, Harris warned, are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened. Okay, what chaos and calamity? Other than the fact, Ms. Vice President, when you had some things after the George Floyd trial and the city of Milwaukee exploded and you were for it. You came out and talked about how these were serious people and they needed to have their voices heard. This is what you were saying. This is what needed to happen. Okay, so is that what you're saying? Because that's some of the like chaos that we saw under Donald Trump. You know, anytime that, you've got some of the black leaders from New York, Jesse Jackson, coming out, Al Stockton coming out, and going crazy. Whenever you have any of that, listen, if you want to be in the most dangerous place in America, be standing between Jesse Jackson and a TV camera, because he'll run right over you. Sharpton will too. Sharpton will run right past you. In that, she says Donald Trump is the unserious guy. Do me a favor. If you're of my party, if you're of the things that matter to me, should I die, please don't use my funeral as a public pulpit, as often happens. Consider the chaos and the calamity when he was in office. It's scary. I mean, it's genuinely scary. But with this soaring rhetoric and a voice that grew stronger through the evening, Harris started inviting voters to join her in charting, quote, a new way forward. You see, the Joe Biden part of this doesn't exist to her. She wants to go a new way forward from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has not been president now for almost 4 years. All of the problems that you see now, the explosions on the campuses of the finer universities around the country, that's not on Donald Trump. It's not. It's not on Donald Trump. It's on Joe Biden. You know, the guy that you sent to the beach for vacation? It's still on Joe Biden. But now she wants this new way forward. She talked about this new election. It's going to be, and I quote, a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and decisive battles of the past. Again, are you jumping from Obama to now? Are you jumping from Trump to now? Or are you realizing that you're still in the realm of Biden-Harris? Ms. Vice President, you're a very important part of the administration that's there now. She tried really hard during the convention to introduce herself to the nation while delivering an exhortation at the same time. Quote, America, let us show each other and the world who we are. Okay, well, she's a former prosecutor, and so she said she had always fought for the people. And here in Chicago, she vowed to be a president who put country above party and above self, who would hold sacred America's fundamental principles and who unites us around our highest aspirations. What are our highest aspirations? My highest aspirations is that we are a country that is genuinely, truly free. That is genuinely and truly America. That is an America that involves American exceptionalism. If you don't understand that, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Look up American exceptionalism. It's not an America that says we're better than everybody else. It's an America that causes us to be greater because of how we function in our country. And I'll just tell you, for the last 4 years, we've not been doing that. We have not been doing that. But she said that we need to show that America is who we are and what we are. She wants to put country above party. She wants to unite us around high aspirations. Well, okay, again, on that one, I'm not sure. What about the high aspirations of a closed border? Not so that it's closed, but so that jobs here and the money that comes from our Social Security and from our emergency funds don't flow to immigrants who should not be here. It can flow through immigrants who should be here and to the American people. When you have some Americans that are in need and they can't have access to federal funds because you've given it away around them to somebody else, I'm sorry, that's not what was talked about. That's not what's supposed to be happening at the southern border. And you wouldn't know, Ms. Harris, because you only came close to the border one time. Look, being in San Diego or being in El Paso, and you're several miles from the border and seeing nobody that are illegals coming through, watching nobody. You know, Kayla Blakesley from Fort Wayne's Morning News has more foreign experience than you do when it comes to our southern border. She was down there for 3 days. She watched them coming across the border. She brought back to me, they're still in my study right now, some of the bracelets that the kids wore when they came across from Mexico, because they had bracelets that were colored and numbered, and it showed what people they were supposed to get in contact with when they came to the other side. I'm not talking about 18-year-olds. I'm talking about 7, 9, 11, 12, and 13-year-olds coming across. No mommy and daddy waiting for them. What am I going to do? Go to such and such a place and look for a white pickup truck. They will take you down to where your mom and dad are, and then they'll meet you, or your aunt and uncle, or your grandma and grandpa. So the kids came over with great expectation, and they showed their bracelets, and so the guys cut their bracelets off and said, now go down this road in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, you're going to see a blue bus or whatever they said it was, and that's where you're going to find them. And they went down the road, and there was no blue bus or yellow sedan or blue pickup truck. There was nothing. They were used to come across, to show they could come across, and some of them came across with some other things, envelopes and things strapped to their legs. Some of them were traveling drugs, and they didn't even know it. That's what's happening on the southern border. My question to you, Ms. Harris, is how on earth can you decide to go ahead and keep our borders closed the way they are when they are obviously not closed? How can we do that? How can we do that? Then she talked about the fact that Donald Trump wants to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Excuse me, Ms. Harris, are you out of your mind? This is the guy that pushed for us to do away with open abortions in whatever states wanted to do away with them. You guys had national abortion laws back when you had Roe v. Wade. And the Supreme Court came out and found that that law was above the realm of what it was supposed to be. Not even so much because of what it covered, but because of the fact that what covered was supposed to be a state's issue. When it lists in the Constitution, in Section 8, of what it is that the federal government is supposed to do. They're supposed to do this and this and this. And then it says, if it's not found there, then it goes back to the states and to the people. The Supreme Court did not come out and say it is illegal or wrong or unconstitutional for abortions to happen anywhere in this country. What they're saying is it was wrong for the Supreme Court to come out and to make the position of what it should be. It should be at the states and the people. And that's what Donald Trump said. And that's what Mike Pence said. It was relegated to the states and to the people. In Indiana, not allowed. But that doesn't mean it's the end of abortion for them. If you don't like it, get in your car and drive 2 hours and be in Illinois. Or drive 3 hours and be in Michigan. And you can go up there and you could have your abortion. This is what she's pushing. She talked about 5 freedoms to expand and enshrine. Abortion's at the top of her list, of course. The freedom to breathe clean air and to drink clean water and to live free from the pollution that fuels the climate crisis. Is that before you got in your limousine and went to your 757 to fly wherever it was you were going next? And I've got news for you. This is my main thought for the day. I've got news for you. If we decided right now to cut our fuel costs and to stop all that and to stop regular fuel and to stop petroleum and all that, we can't function as a country. We cannot function as a country. We then become sitting ducks. I'm not interested in being a sitting duck. Are you? That's what Kamala Harris is pushing for. The freedom that unlocks all the others, she said, is the freedom to vote. This would be kept through sweeping new federal election law. Not on your life. Because at that point, you can have those that collect votes from others. Hey, I drove all over Northeast Indiana and I found 12,000 votes from people that can't get out to vote, so I have their votes and so we've got it covered. Will you do that? That's the beginning of the end. My apologies for not having Philip Wegman on today, and I've already talked to him, and he's a very understanding guy, and I appreciate it. More coming up on the program. We'll do it right now, coming up in just a section here on WOWO. Hi, and welcome back as we continue the second hour of the Pat Miller program. One little sliver of 3 minutes worth of broadcast time that I have to get us to the bottom of the hour. Again, I appreciate very much today, as I do every week, Philip Wegman from Real Clear Politics being part of our program and all that we try to do here. He's a very stand-up guy, and I always appreciate him being around. And since he's the White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics, sometimes he has his nose and his ear there in the business of what happens around the White House press room, and he gets us some things to look at. Going back to this thing that he and I were talking about, this Harris interview, her first interview since she was named officially and she received the nomination of her party for president. Vice President sat down for this first interview with Dana Bash on CNN, and shame on CNN. They on the banner, and I've looked at it several times in several places, it wasn't added after. This is how it aired, and it said live. Down there in the corner where it says, we're with Kamala Harris, and this is live. No, it's not. It was not live. They recorded it. They altered some things. They took out some things. You could not have a more safe landing interview than what they gave her at CNN. And I didn't expect anything less than that from CNN. And they're going to be practically in bed with each other from now to the election. After Joe Biden dropped out of the race, Kamala Harris popped to the top of the ticket following the disastrous debate performance that Donald Trump had over Joe Biden. The debate, which included Biden, tripping over his own words, losing his train of thought, opened the floodgates to traditional Democrats. Hey, guys, we've got to do something. Was that your first inclination? Is this the first time you saw this? I think if you didn't see it before this, you're blind. That's just my take. So the highly anticipated now sit down with CNN has Harris having 39 days after she became the presumptive nominee. She has largely avoided the media since ascending to the Democrat throne, only answering media questions while on the campaign trail, many times under the wing of her airplane where you can barely hear what's going on, and holding no press conferences. Harris was joined by her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and some people are saying, well, she needed Tim Walz. She's so scared. Normally, the first interview that a candidate has after they've received the nomination from their party is, in fact, with their running mate. That's not unusual. But the fact that she had him on there and then he had very little to say except when he had to talk about his own fumblings relative to his mentioning of his service and carrying guns into combat for our country. Didn't happen. And we'll be talking about that too. I've got 4 or 5 things that I pulled out of her interview there with Dana Bash there on CNN. I'm just going to read you what she said, tell you what she said, tell you what maybe she should have said, and I'm interested in your take. Did you hear Kamala Harris? Are you satisfied she's the one? We talk about all of this as we continue together. We've got a half an hour to wrap up our Saturday meeting here, as we always do, from noon to 2, right here on the Pat Miller program on WOWO 92.3 FM and on 1190 AM. Welcome back. Our last half hour together on this Saturday. I always appreciate emails from you, what you think about the program, about guests that we've had, about stories that we've covered. And remember, you can always reach me, Pat Miller, all one word, no dots or dashes, Pat Miller at WOWO.com. Well, Kamala Harris, in the first foible I think that she had, she was asked about the day one question. If you go back and if you do a search on almost every presidential candidate, they come out of the box with, on day one, here's what we're going to do. Obama did it. Trump did it. Back before them, George W. did it. George H.W. Bush did it. I mean, it's nothing new. It's what's done. Well, she was asked twice about day one, And she just gave these overarching answers instead of responding with a specific executive order or directive. The voters are really eager, Dana Bash said. They're eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House? Now, if she's had all these days, 39 of them, to prepare for this interview, do you not think whoever's preparing her for the interview should have or could have or did talk to her about this question? It's not an unknown question. She says, well, there are a number of things I will tell you, and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think the American people are ready for a new way forward in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by and hoped by and optimism. So what's the policy? What's the policy? She goes, I think sadly in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation. And I think people are ready to turn the page on that. So what would you do day one? Bash tries again. Day one, it's going to be about one, implementing my plan on what I call opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which includes what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses. Okay, what is that? What are you going to do on that? Here's some things that she said. For example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes and a crib. There's the work that we're going to do about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one. So day one, okay, you've got the whole problem with the foreign governments attacking Israel. You've got the problem down at the border. Hello, Miss Border Czar, answer your phone. You've got all the problems that are screaming at us and coming at us. And day one is let's make sure that we've got baby cribs in order and a tax credit. That's day one. I'm just telling you, it's got to be more than that. There has got to be more than that. Now, the second one, and I found this really, really, really interesting because as she's questioned there by Dana Bash, she said she made herself clear on allowing fracking in 2020, except it wasn't hers. She doubled down in the interview that she would not ban fracking if elected, claiming that she made clear where she stood on fracking during the 2020 election. No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020 that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking. Did your president ban it? You know, why didn't she ask her that? Well, yeah, but that what happened there on that stuff and what he did by executive order, that's him, that's not me. Well, let's just duck, bob, and weave, shall we? I mean, look, were you part of that administration or not? When she dropped her bid for president in 2019, and then Biden reached back and plucked her so she could be on the meeting, she said in a CNN town hall, there's no question I am in favor of banning fracking. 2019, look it up. She was there with her CNN town hall as the newly appointed vice presidential candidate with Joe Biden, and she said there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking on the first day in office. She was asked about fracking during her 2020 vice presidential debate against Mike Pence, but did not reveal her position on fracking, instead saying Biden would not ban fracking. Well, you missed that too. Fox News Digital reviewed a transcript of the 2020 vice presidential debate. They found fracking was mentioned 9 times, with Harrison using the word twice. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. She said that during the debate of the 2020 cycle. I will repeat, and the American people know that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact, she added during another part of the debate. Yeah. Her running mate, Governor Walz of Minnesota, had this claim that he made on carrying guns into conflict. When you hear a lot of arguments going on now by different veterans worried about him and his claim of valor, this is the one that they're talking about. Governor Walz attempted to blame his grammar when asked about his prior comments, that he wants to ban guns like the ones he carried in war, even though he never saw combat. during his time in the Army National Guard. Never, not once. In fact, we all know now that he resigned and walked away from his unit that he was in charge of as they were just days, long hours away from going into the battle. He never saw combat. Dana Bash said, this country is just starting to get to know you. And she asked him, I want to ask you about how you described your service in the National Guard. You said you carried weapons in war, but you have never been deployed, actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you? And he responded, well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom. Whether it's Congress or the governor, my record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I like to speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and grounds around guns. So Bash asked him, again, did you misspeak? And Walls had to admit that while citing his grammar, yeah, I said when we were talking about that, in this case, this was after a school shooting. The ideas of carrying these weapons of war, and my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. Okay, let's do this. Let's reach over and grab your wife and throw her under the bus. Shall we do that? But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have and I never will. What in the living heck did that mean? Okay, how many people are attacking his children because they love him? How many people are attacking him and his dog? Who's doing that? Are we just reaching for the stars here? I'm not exactly sure what we're reaching for. Kamala Harris, the candidate for the Democrats, was asked during this debate, during this tete-a-tete, if you would, her first interview since becoming the official candidate, would you appoint a Republican to the cabinet if elected? Now, let me just say this. It's a good question, and it's also a very safe question. In recent history, virtually every president has had members of the other party on their cabinet. They're not the ones deciding if we're going to war. They're not in the very quick, short lineage of being up there to become president of the United States. Okay, there's none of that. I would suggest one thing. Donald, if you become president, and I'm praying you do, let's do this. Pete Buttigieg, let's drop him from the cabinet, shall we, sir? Because I think he's more trouble than he's worth. But they asked Harris, would you, in fact, appoint a Republican to your cabinet? Yes, I would. Okay, she said that. Now, is that the same as saying I'm against banning fracking, and now I want to ban fracking, and I'm against this, and now I'm for it? I mean, she has created a whole new genre of flip-flopping. She has turned it into a modern art. She can flip with the best flopper. I mean, she can cause more problems on her positions and then moving them around. What other ones did she flip-flop on? We'll talk about that as we go through the balance of this part of the Pat Miller program here with you on this Saturday. Make sure you've already got it in your phone. Have your phone, your smartphone, your watch, have it go off at noon on Saturdays, and you're like, oh, right, Miller's on, and get on and listen to what we're saying and what we're talking about. And then email me if I'm covering the things you want me to cover, and then we'll go on from there. Remember, if you missed the show, it's always there in podcast form on my page at wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.